Welcome to Just Asia, HRC TV's weekly human rights program. These are the headlines. Sri Lanka mourns after worst attack since civil war. Hong Kong's umbrella movement activists sentenced to prison terms. Teenage girl burned to death in Bangladesh after complaining of sexual harassment. As presidential votes are counted in Indonesia, political tension continues. Nepal must amend transitional justice law. Burmese leader pardons 9,500 prisoners, but not Reuters journalists. Welcome to AHRC TV's Just Asia. I'm Alexandra. This week, Just Asia begins with Sri Lanka, which has been traumatized by a series of coordinated bombings on Easter Sunday. More than 350 people were killed and at least 500 wounded in the deadliest attack in Sri Lanka since the end of the civil war 10 years ago. The end included at least 45 children. The blast targeted 3 churches as well as 4 hotels, including the Shangri-La, Kingsbury, and the Cinnamon Ground in the capital Colombo. While most victims were Sri Lankan, at least 39 foreigners were also killed. While Islamic State has claimed responsibility for the attacks, investigations are still ongoing to see what direct links to international groups can be established. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe acknowledged there was a prior warning about the bombings and told reporters that some officials were likely to lose their jobs over intelligence lapses. So far, President Maithripala Sirisena is reported to have informed Defense Secretary Hemasiri Fernando and IGP Pujith Jayasundara to resign from their offices. Just Asia speaks to Basil Fernando for his views on the tragedy facing Sri Lanka.
It has been revealed that over 2 weeks back, with details of names, Indian security sources, intelligence sources have intimated to the authorities in Sri Lanka about possibility of such an attack. Nothing was done in order to ensure that the people know about this threat and also take precautions to prevent it. In fact, these events and which is being followed further by bombs being found in many places and being diffused show a massive scale of an attack. This really is the test of the kind of governance that exists in Sri Lanka. If the people who lead politically, both in the government as well as in the opposition, are capable only of bluffing and engage in all types of trivial debates among themselves for their personal affairs and are unable to think and act seriously, then the people of such a country is very unfortunate. Catastrophe will follow catastrophe, and all kinds of promise that this will be the last, is not worth paying any attention to. What is lacking in the ruling in Sri Lanka is a kind of genuine seriousness on the part of the people who rule on the task of ruling. Now, when the leaders bluff, the resistance and the resilience of the people breaks down. People begin to lose confidence. People lose moral courage. At this time, what the people need most is the moral courage to face up to a grave threat. But moral courage under these circumstances cannot come unless they see in their leaders a kind of seriousness to overcome this problem and to bring back peace as well as the ability to move around and do their jobs. blame games are another form of bluff. So, the real message behind this catastrophe and the real way to overcome this is for people to demand thorough seriousness on the part of the political leaders, and if they cannot, then people should ensure that they intervene and take things, not the law into their hands, but to take the governance into their hands. Influence on the governance in keeping them in their hands. Particularly serious threats have also creative power. That creative power is to bring what is inside the people and to come forward for the defense of their own lives and the lives of their children. This is the only way by which the nation can survive, and the people's lives, the children's right for education and security, people's right to work, all this can be defended.
In Hong Kong, democracy activists have been sentenced to prison terms of up to 16 months for their roles in the umbrella movement protests in 2014. The protest 5 years ago demanded more open elections and sought to force Hong Kong's leader to step down. Tens of thousands of people joined sit-ins and peaceful street demonstrations, using umbrellas to shield themselves when the police used tear gas and pepper spray to disperse the crowds. Hence the name, Umbrella Movement. Two professors, Tai and Chan Kin-man, and a retired pastor, Chu Yiu-ming, who along with 6 others were convicted this month of public nuisance charges, were sentenced to 16 months in prison. The sentence of Mr. Chu, 75, was suspended for 2 years because of his age and public service record, while Mr. Tai and Mr. Chen were ordered to begin their sentence immediately. At the sentencing hearing, Judge Johnny Chan of the district court said the activists had failed to notice the ordinary folks who needed to use the public roads to go to work. He noted that none of the activists had expressed regret for their involvement in the movement. Hong Kong Watch, a rights group, said in a statement, "The peaceful advocacy of democracy practiced by the umbrella movement leaders should be commended, not criminalized or punished with imprisonment." 5 other defendants were also sentenced on Wednesday on related public nuisance charges. Next, Bangladesh police inaction and allegiance of the thug of the ruling party led to burning a young girl to death. 19-year-old Nusrat Jahan Rafi was set on fire after filing a sexual harassment complaint against her principal. On March 27, the principal of her madrasa called her into his office and repeatedly touched her in an inappropriate manner. Before things could go any further, she ran away. Nusrat was brave enough to make a complaint at the local police stations on the same day. Police Inspector Mohsen Hossain of Sanagazi Police and his colleagues made objectionable remarks while they video recorded Nusrat's statement without her consent. The police officers posted the video clip in social media. Although the principal was arrested after Nusrat's complaint, the ruling party student wing leader organized protests calling for his release. People began to blame Nusrat, and her family worried about her safety. On April 6, when Nusrat went to school to sit her final exams, a group of persons in burqas accosted her on the roof and pressured her to withdraw her complaint. When she refused, they dosed her in kerosene and set her alight. According to the police bureau on investigation chief, the killers wanted to make it look like a suicide. The plan failed when Nusrat was rescued after they fled the scene. She was able to give a statement before she died on April 10th. Police have since arrested 15 people, 7 of them allegedly involved in the murder. Nusrat's death has sparked protests, and thousands have used social media to express their anger about both of her case and the treatment of sexual assault victims in Bangladesh due to the political allegiance of the perpetrators. Moving to Indonesia, tensions are running high in the country after the April 17th elections. as both presidential candidates claim to have the most votes. Opposition presidential candidate Mr. Prabowo Subianto claimed victory over the 2019 presidential election hours before quick count surveys officially ended, in a repeat of a similar declaration he made in the 2014 presidential race, which he lost. Most pollsters currently have incumbent President Joko Widodo leading the presidential race with about 54% of the vote, while Prabowo has 45%. Prabowo rejected early results showing Widodo ahead of him, claiming the results are partisan and not credible. This is causing conflict among supporters and raising political tensions. Civil society and religious leaders are calling on the government and the General Election Commission to maintain public harmony and be more transparent in counting the votes. The real voting count has reached 18%, and the KPU requires 35 days to complete real voting count. In Nepal, Human Rights Watch is calling on authorities to comply with Supreme Court rulings and international standards before appointing new transitional justice commissioners to address violations during the 1996 to 2006 civil war. The present terms of the Commission of Investigation on Enforced Disappeared Person and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission ended in February 2019. The government is attempting to rush through an appointment process without proper transparency or consultation, which is failing to gain the trust of victims. Human Rights Watch South Asia Director noted, for 12 years and counting, Nepal's rulers have tried to railroad conflict victims into accepting a transitional justice process designed largely to protect those responsible for abuse. Over 13,000 people were killed and 1,300 disappeared during Nepal's civil war. The armed conflict between the government forces and the Maoist rebels lasted a decade, ending with a comprehensive peace agreement in 2006 that included a commitment to provide justice to victims of human rights abuses. Since the establishment of the two justice commissions in 2015, they received over 60,000 complaints. However, despite several extensions, the commissions have failed to make significant progress in their investigation over the last 4 years. Before the commissions even began their work, the Supreme Court in 2015 struck down key provisions of the law governing them, finding that it could be used to provide amnestics to those responsible for the gravest abuse. Yet, years after the Supreme Court's landmark judgment, this law has yet to be amended. In Burma, a presidential amnesty last week ordered the release of more than 9,500 prisoners, including 16 foreigners. The pardon, marking the country's traditional New Year, did not see the release of two Pulitzer Prize-winning Reuters reporters. Supporters waited outside Insane Prison for the possible release of the two Reuters reporters jailed for breaking the Official Secrets Act, but they were not freed. Wallon and Kyeosoo are serving 7-year sentences. They say they were framed because of official displeasure over the reporting on the crackdown by security forces on members of the Rohingya Muslim minority in Rakhine State. The Assistance Association for Political Prisoners, an independent human rights organization, said it knew of only 2 political detainees in prison since 2000 who were released last Wednesday. Last year, 8,490 Burmese citizens and 51 foreigners received New Year's pardons. At least 36 of those were political prisoners. That is all for this episode of Just Asia. For more on this and other issues, please visit www.humanrights.asia or www.alrc.asia/justasia. Thank you for watching and see you next week.